Hello and welcome. My name is Kevin Lawler. I'm recording from Denver, Colorado. This is a brand new podcast called Inside the Draw. First one I've ever done, tennis podcast. I intend to record every Saturday, every Sunday, once the draws are out for the following week's tennis tournaments on the ATP or WTA. I'd love to analyse the draw, look through them, come up with kind of betting angles, but I want this to be a show not just about betting, but for anyone who loves their tennis. We're going to do analysis. We'll do look backs of the previous week tournaments, players to keep an eye out for, anything that's hot on the tour. Generally, I think it's like an underserved area. It's something that I'm hugely interested in and have followed tennis probably since the age of 10 or 12. Back to the good old glory days of Federer and even before the Federer-Nadal rivalry. So I've been meaning to do this for a while and excited to kick it off. Felt like a good time to do it right as we move from Indian Wells and Miami into the summer kind of clay court season in Europe. Next week is Monte Carlo, so we have a quieter week this week, but we do make the switch from the hard courts back to clay. So look, let's dive straight in. I'm recording this on a Saturday in Denver. There's no betting lines out. There's lines for, I think, one of the tournaments, maybe Bucharest, but nothing else. So I'll come back tomorrow and record once we have lines out and clip it onto the end with picks for all of the tournaments. But I have gone through each of the draws, so let's take a look. We'll start with Charleston. This week is kind of a semi-down week. You get the top players or most of the top players skipping, and they will come back next week on the men's side in Monte Carlo. And then the men have three ATP 250s this week, while the women have a 250 in Bogota and a 500 in Charleston. So that 500 in Charleston is the best starting point. It's got the best field of the week on either tour. Just looking at the draw, I mean, Jess Pegula headlines as the number one seed. She's had a super start to 2026. Best start of any kind of year so far in her career. She's looked amazing. Like, I don't consider Jess Pegula to be a clay court player, but she comes in here as the one seed, and honestly, looking through the draw, it's going to be very hard to topple her. We don't have prices yet for Charleston, but like Pegula, defending champion, I think she's made 3 semi-finals over the years. So like, even though we don't kind of consider her a clay quarter, like, she's very capable on this surface, and I think just very hard to beat from anybody in this field. You're lacking the Sabalenkas, you're lacking the Swiatek's. Amanda Anisimova not just got rid of her coach after the Sunshine Swing, but she also pulled out of Charleston this week with an apparent injury. I'm assuming she's resting up for Europe and will start somewhere next week. So yeah, Pegula comes in. She's got a relatively easy couple of matches to round her into form. Lulu Sun or Putintseva in the first round, you'd imagine, will be pretty straightforward for Pegula. I think her first test is probably likely to come maybe in the semi-finals. It's going to be Jovic or Maria Sakkari or maybe Anna Kalinskaya. I think Sakkari is actually the one to look out for there. She has some previous here. She's also got a win over Swiatek in Doha, which is a notable win a couple of weeks ago. So potentially rounding back into form and a dangerous player if she is in form. But other than that, like, it's a pretty soft half for Pegula. It's hard to see where the challenge comes from. If you look down the bottom half, like, I kind of consider that the tier 2. There's a couple of names here, like Maddie Keys is down there, Belinda Bencic, Elisa Mertens, and Katerina Alexandrova. If I had to have a gun to my head and pick kind of the biggest challenge here for Pegula, it's actually Bencic. Bencic looked great last week. She had a super win over Amanda Anisimova in Miami. So she's rounding back into form. I think Bencic does her best work on fast hard courts or grass. I always liked her for Wimbledon every year. She's one I tend to look out for in the draw at Wimbledon, and certainly in the betting if there is some value in the price. So yeah, she's not really one I look out for on a clay court draw, but given the draw the way it is, where she's landed, Alexandrova is a soft 2 seed for my money. Maddie Keys has been poor 2026. Not by her standards. Like, it's been a rough start to this year by her standards. And Madison Keys is someone who can play on clay. She's obviously done well over the years. But Bencic won this title here in 2022 and made the made the final again the next year in 2023. She beat Ons Jabeur in 22, lost to Ons Jabeur in 23. So obviously got some form and likes this tournament. I think the fact that she's rounding back into form after a year out with pregnancy and the birth of a child, and then came back and now she looks great again. She looks in great shape. I think she's really one to watch out for. So we don't have any odds. There's no books up with this tournament yet. I imagine that will happen tonight at some stage. I can see from the draw a Pegula Bencic or a Pegula maybe Keys kind of final. Elise Mertens has form on clay, but like most of her best results are going back 5 or 6 years at this point in time, so relatively happy to overlook her. There are some other names in the draw, but I think in a 500 like this with so many decent players entered, it's hard for me to look past Pegula and Bencic, but we'll come back tomorrow when we have some of the betting lines to go by. I think we'll conclude on the women's before moving on to the men's. So quickly on to Bogota. Bogota is like on both the ATP and the WTA side, it's the weakest draw this week. I'm not going to spend much time on Bogota at all. You've got back-to-back two-time defending champion Camila Osorio from Colombia. So she's a local. Look, a couple of things to say about Osorio. She had a super win over Jovic in Indian Wells. She's a player who, if you have money on, you love the fight that you get from her. I think she's tenacious. She's decent on clay. She's decent on every surface. I wouldn't call her a clay specialist, but she's absolutely not alien on clay. Like she's well able to play on it. Like I say, two-time defending champion. One of those wins was over Marie Buzkova, who's actually the top seed here this week. I believe both of them are in the same side of the draw. Yeah, they are. Buzkova is obviously the top seed, and Osorio is in the second quarter. So they're destined to meet in the semi-final. Outside of that, like, it's a really bad draw. Tatiana Maria is the fourth seed. Again, like, I think she's most dangerous on a grass tournament where her slice can play havoc. She's obviously done okay on clay over the years. And then Jessica Buzas Monero, second seed. But again, for me, that's a pretty weak second seed in the 250. So I think the best two girls are in the top half. It's Buzkova and it's Camila Osorio. We do not have betting lines yet. So we're going to hold off. There's no selection here as of right now, but for me, I will be keeping an eye on Osorio. She should be priced as the favourite when the lines go up later in the week, or tomorrow, I should say. So we'll come back to this one as part of the quick show tomorrow to clip onto the end here and make our selections. With that, we're going to move on to the men, actually. So where better to start than Houston? It's the best tournament this week on the ATP side. Headlined by Ben Shelton. Won the title here in 2024. He beat Francis Tiafoe. And in the second round, if not the third round, he's due to come up against Jensen Brooksby. So Brooksby's coming back into form a little bit, and Brooksby's an interesting one because he's actually the defending champion here. So you have Shelton, who won it 2 years ago, Brooksby, who won it last year. Both guys beat Francis Tiafoe in the final, and Francis Tiafoe is actually the 2 seed here. But it's littered with names. It's a relatively balanced draw. Lerner Tien is the 3rd seed, also up in the top half. And then down in the bottom half, we've got Thomas Martin Echeverri, who won Rio in the Golden Swing just a month ago. And then we've got Tommy Paul, Alex Michelsen, and Francis Tiafoe. Obviously Paul, like, just to touch on Tommy Paul, I think he's along with Shelton, he's probably the elite one here. Again, Paul for me is not a clay quarter, but he's done excellent work on clay over the years. His match last week against Arthur Fils in Miami was just amazing. It's probably the best match I've seen in 2026 so far. It had everything. For a tennis match that had no breaks to serve over 3 sets, it was massive entertainment. Obviously, Fils came through in the end from 6-2 down in the tiebreak and won it, I believe, 8-6. But Paul looked super there. So depends on the motivation of the players. You would imagine Tiafoe is probably motivated by this tournament. He seems to do well here. He's been in the last 3 finals. So he lost to Brooksby last year, he lost to Shelton the year before, and then he beat Thomas Martin Echeverri 3 years ago. So, Tiafoe will have his eyes set on a 4th consecutive final. He'll have Rinky Hijikata or Alexander Kovacevic in the second round after his bye, but yeah, by all intents and purposes, his first round. So I do see him getting to a semi-final where he has to get past probably Michelsen in the quarters. And he'd be likely to play Tommy Paul or Thomas Martin Echeverri in the semis, and then in the final, you would imagine from the top half it's going to be Shelton fighting out with Brooksby and Lerner Tien. Like, Lerner Tien has the easier section there because he has to come through Brandon Nakashima to make the semis. Really, there's no odds here just yet. I would probably be looking for a price on Lerner Tien or potentially even a price on Echeverri, but we'll see. I think Shelton is probably going to be really short, and I think probably Tiafoe is going to be very short as well. We'll come back to that one tomorrow evening, but certainly hard to see an upset outside of the top names in this draw. It's littered with 5 or 6 kind of really good players. which as we move on to the next couple of tournaments, you'll find not the case in all of those. Let's move on to Marrakech. So we've had a look at Houston. I think Marrakech is the next best tournament on the men's side. It's kind of headlined by 2 or 3 bigger names, I would say, and then we've got kind of an obvious tier 2. But again, for me, this is one where it's really hard to see an outsider coming through just with some of the decent names that are here. We've got Darderi coming off a title in Santiago and a final in Buenos Aires as the 1 seed. So the Italian kind of has the top half to himself a little bit. And then the bottom half is Tomas Mašák and Talon Griekspoor. Darderi actually beat Griekspoor in the final here last year. So like every chance that we're looking at a repeat of that. I think they're both coming in good form. Both go clay quarters, particularly Darderi, where clay would be his preferred surface. So I do think he's the main guy to keep an eye out for here. Again, we don't actually have lines, so we need to come back to this one tomorrow. But just to preview the draw, Darderi would probably have Yannick Hanfmann in the quarterfinal, so you'd have to like Darderi there. I tend to like Hanfmann at the high altitude tournaments, thinking like Kitzbühel, some of the ones where they play at altitude and the big serve can come into play for Hanfmann. Second quarter is really pretty lame. Like Corentin Moutet is the 3rd seed, which tells you all you need to know about the tournament. And Kamil Majrzak, the Pole, is the 5th seed. And again, like not really a clay quarter, does his best work on hard courts. So I think Darderi will be in a nice spot there to reach another final. And then the kind of tier 2 that I alluded to, like that bottom half is not the place to be. You want to be in the top half. Bottom half has got Vico Priva, Matteo Berrettini, Tomas Mašák, who we already mentioned, and obviously Griekspoor is the number 2 seed. So for me, it's hard to look past Darderi at the top making a final again, and I would probably lean towards Mašák or Griekspoor. Mašák, it feels like has stepped up a level this year, so I'm kind of keen on him, see what he does, but we'll keep an eye out in the betting. I would be surprised if Darderi isn't a relatively decent favourite, just given the draw and the fact he's coming in decent form with a recent title on clay, and also obviously the defending champion who's going to feel quite at home here. So we'll keep an eye out for that and come back to it tomorrow. And then to touch on the last draw that we have, this is by far the worst this week. It's the men's tournament in Bucharest. We've got Gabriel Diallo as the top seed. Not at home at all on clay. He likes fast hard courts. He likes grass. He likes tournaments where his serve can get him cheap free points. Nuno Borges, to be fair, 4th seed, also in the top half, very capable and competent on clay. He's the kind of player, if he was in either of the other 2 men's draws this week, I could see him like going all the way potentially. So he's a super player. You've got Fabio Marozsan, the Hungarian, in the bottom half as the 3rd seed, and then Adrian Mannarino, again a really weak 2nd seed, to close out the bracket. But for me, there is someone hidden here in the bottom half. Sebastian Baez is the 5th seed, hiding down at the bottom. Just an absolute dog on clay. Super little player, really consistent from both wings, loves clay, has done all of his best work throughout his career on clay. He's 6-1. There is betting for this tournament. For a moment I got excited looking at this tournament because Pablo Carreno Busta was priced by DraftKings at 20-1. Carreno Busta is coming in on the back of 2 challenger titles in the past 2 weeks. Murcia, where he won his first one, and then Alicante, so 2 in Spain. He's obviously trying to get back on the clay courts ahead of the ATP season starting basically this week. But he's beaten some decent players down there, Carbales Baena, Pedro Martinez, so making his return and coming back and looking in decent form. He's got 8 or 9 wins on the bounce now, so he would have been someone, if he was in this tournament, that I'd be keen to take at that kind of 20-22-1 range. But given the draw where it is now, Baez I think is 3rd favourite at 6-1. Price is fine. It's not amazing. He has an easy enough opener. He has an easy enough second round. Mannarino is likely to be his 3rd round, which I really like for him in all of those games. And then he's probably likely to come up against Daniel Altmaier or Fabio Marozsan in the semis, and he should be too good for either of those. So he would be one that I'd like, and I would probably fancy him in the final. He'd be a slight favourite over Nuno Borges if it came down to it. Botic van de Zandschulp is in the top half as well. We like Botic. So that second quarter is not actually a cakewalk by any means. Damir Zumur is in there. Shevchenko is in there, the Kazakh, and like I said, Borges and Botic. So that one is anyone's, but that top quarter, Diallo is the 1 seed, but actually Mariano Navone is the one that's probably going to come out of that. He's 16-1 in the outright. Given the draw, not a bad bet at all. But my pick here would probably be Baez. Just given how weak the field is, and I think his easy run to the semis, we'll take it from there. Story time before we finish off. 2018 Marrakech. I remember backing Pablo Andujar at 250-1. The books went up with him at 250-1. He had won it twice prior, but like years before, so maybe 6 or 7 years before. He wasn't coming in form. I can't remember if he had to go through qualifiers. I don't think so. But he went up at 250-1, which is a crazy price, and I backed him at that price and followed it all week. Small money. I didn't have money to be throwing around in those days, not that I do now, but I certainly have more than I had then. He came through, made it to the final, looked okay at times during the week, never looked amazing, and was a big underdog in the final. He was playing Kyle Edmund, who wouldn't have been known as a clay courter, but with that heavy topspin forehand, very capable on clay. And Edmund went in as a decent favourite. From memory, maybe a 2-5 or 1-3 favourite. And Andujar won the first set 6-2, and then he won the second set 6-2. Just romped home. Didn't put a foot wrong, didn't miss a ball, took every chance he came. It was one of those, honestly, one of the biggest highlights of I've ever had betting tennis, just because of the price and how easily he won the final in a match. He wasn't expected to win, I guess. So hopefully we'll have some similar success in this upcoming clay court season. But that's certainly a fun memory. And Andujar, his jersey hangs on the wall, so to speak. So we'll come back tomorrow and we'll get the prices up. All right, welcome back. As you can see, for those observant ones of you paying attention, I'm in a different t-shirt. It's a different day. It's Sunday here in Denver. Sun is shining. We have prices for basically all of the tournaments this week. I think we only had prices maybe for one yesterday, so I'll run through quickly. We did go through all of the draws yesterday, so certainly not going to be repeating myself here. I'll clip this onto the end of the video and make it easy. But I just wanted to run through again briefly over a couple of minutes and maybe highlight a couple of angles for bets. I want this to be more a tennis-focused podcast than a betting-focused podcast specifically. There will be bets called out every week, but I don't want it to be the sole angle of the pod. I definitely want it to be, analysis and player chat and conversation about tennis. But certainly I'm interested in the betting aspect of it myself. So here we are. I will call out basically like how confident I am in certain selections versus others as we go along if there are ones I particularly like. So we'll start briefly in Charleston for the women, which again, to repeat myself, is the best tournament this week. It's a 500. It's the only 500 across both tours. Jess Pegula, we said, would be short favourite, and she is the favourite. I think she's arguably worth a bet. She's plus 250 with a couple of the books, plus 240 with some of the others. So shop around. But I think at that price, she's probably still worth betting. Her route is not bad. She's defending champion. She is in the best form she has ever started a season before. So I think really hungry to come here and win. The fact that she's here and hasn't skipped it like a lot of the other top 5 players is indicative of her desire, I would say. We called out Bencic yesterday, way too short. She's 5-1. I wouldn't dream of backing her to come out of the other half and beat Pegula potentially in the final at 5-1. So we're skipping Bencic. The one that I kind of like the most, a couple of flyers from the bottom half. If I was to pick an outsider, a real dark horse, they would have to be in the bottom half to come away from Pegula in the top. I'm a sucker for Sloane Stephens, kind of always have been. We're looking at a former French Open finalist there, obviously a couple of years ago. Has also won the US, as we know. Form is somewhat dodgy, but I do like her on clay. She's good on clay. She's played a lot in the past in her youth on green clay, which they have in Charleston. So I don't mind 80-1 on Sloane as a flyer in the bottom half. The other one would be Magda Linette, about 50-1. I think that's possibly okay to get a run from her. But the one that was most interesting to me at 40-1 was Sarah Bejlek. I don't know how to pronounce that exactly, but Sarah Bejlek, she is coming off a title last month in Abu Dhabi, which for such a young player is incredible. She came all the way through qualies, won 7 matches in a row. She had a win over Clara Tauson, a win over Ostapenko, a win over Alexandrova, who's the second seed here this week. So at 40-1, I think she's probably worth a go and worth a flyer in the bottom half. half. She has won ITFs on clay as recently as October. So I think of all of the dark horses listed, Bejlek is probably the one I feel best about having a cut at. But probably the main bet would be Pegula. I think she's just about okay to bet at that price. Moving on to Bogota, the only other women's draw this week. I actually really like a bet here. Marie Buzkova, we mentioned yesterday that this is a 2-horse race. The 2 best players are in the top half, which is unlucky for them. But we saw the same in Miami last week with Sabalenka and Rybakina both in the top half. We've got the same here. We've got Buzkova, the 1 seed, and then we've got Camila Osorio, the Colombian, 2-time defending champion, the 2nd seed, the 3rd seed, and she's in the 2nd quarter. So it's quite likely they're going to play each other in the semis, but this is way closer than the books are pricing it. Osorio is priced in the range of plus 270, plus 280, and Buzkova is plus 900. And I have that way closer. I would prefer Osorio. I think she's a better player. I think she's a better fighter, and she will be favoured in that match. But she's like in the $1.60, $1.65 type range of favoritism over Buzkova, and they both have an easy run to get there. So I really like Buzkova here at 9-1. She'll be favoured in every match of this tournament apart from the Osorio one. So I like Buzkova there. I'm going to bet that at 9-1, and it's probably actually my favourite bet of the week. And Katrina Kawa, or Katarzyna Kawa, the Pole, 22-1 down the bottom if you wanted a flyer from some of the long shots down in the bottom where Tatiana Maria is one of the seeds. Jessica Buzas Monero is the 2nd seed. I mean, she's fine. She probably will make the final, but at 7-1 to make the final and then also to beat one of Buzkova or Osorio, I'll probably pass on that. Kawa made a final here. I think it was last year she made the final here and lost. And she's been playing ITFs in Turkey for the past month to try and prepare for this. So I don't mind the 22-1. Not crazy about it. Far prefer the 9-1 Buzkova, which is the best bet there. Moving over quickly to the men's tournament. We'll touch on Houston first. I honestly don't really like anything here. I'm going to bet Francis Tiafoe. He's 8-1, which I think is a bit of value. He's made, I think we said it yesterday on the pod, but he's made all three of the last 3 finals in his last 3 years here. So he's lost 2 of them and won 1. He's 8-1. I think that's pretty fair. Shelton is plus 250. I think way too prohibitive for me. Tommy Paul is half the price of Tiafoe, and I think he will be favoured over Tiafoe, but I don't think he deserves to be half the price of him. So I would be quite happy to take on Tiafoe, or to take Tiafoe on here. And back him at 8-1, which is the same price you can get Brandon Nakashima in the top half, and I think there's quite a gulf in terms of class between those players. Another one that kind of sticks out to me here is Lerner Tien. I would prefer a slightly bigger price than the 12-1, but I do like him to win his section. He's got a decent section. He's in with Brooksby in the 2nd quarter, so I don't mind that at all. So I wouldn't put anyone off betting Lerner Tien at 12-1, but my main bet here is going to be Tiafoe at 8s. Let's move on to Marrakech. I'm on the fence here. Darderi is a little bit short for me. The only thing is his draw is really, really nice. He doesn't really have anyone difficult that he's come up against, and the bottom half is difficult at this point, and especially that 3rd quarter, which is where my pick is coming from, Tomas Mašák. So Tomas Mašák is 12-1 with DraftKings. He doesn't have the easiest draw. Like, there are some decent players in the 3rd quarter, but Mašák's the best player in this tournament. He's the best ball striker. Obviously has a win over Sinner in the Middle East a couple of months ago, or even a couple of weeks ago, I should say, which is very, very impressive. So I like Mašák. I'm going to bet Mašák at 12-1. It's bigger than I was expecting. It's more than double the price of Talon Griekspoor, who's also down in the bottom, and Griekspoor is 5-1, so I much prefer Mašák at 12s there. And then, I wouldn't put anyone off betting Darderi. I think Darderi is going to make the final. I don't trust Hanfman, and then I don't think the likes of Corentin Moutet are strong enough to really trouble him. So I do like Darderi to make the final, but I will take a go at Mašák. Super ball striker, doesn't love clay as much as some of the other players in here, but I think he can do real damage to a draw like this. If you wanted a flyer, I was looking at Alexander Muller at 40-1. The only problem is his form. He has won ATP titles on clay, but his form coming in is just not really there. So I'm not going to put him up as a proper pick, but maybe worth a flyer out of the bottom half. And then the last tournament of the week, so Bucharest, and we touched on it yesterday. I said Baez, we did have pricing on this yesterday. I said Baez at 6-1. I'm going to stick with that. I think he's got a nice little section down the bottom. Pretty easy route to the semis. He's in with Adrian Manarino, who does not like clay at all. He likes grass and low bouncing hard courts. And the other one that I actually mentioned on the pod yesterday before we had prices across the board for all of them, including qualifiers, Mariano Navone, I said him 16-1. He's actually shortened to 12s now, but some of the books are even half of that at like 6 and 7-1. So Navone and Baez, the two Argentinians, are my bets here. Navone is in with Gabriel Diallo in the top, and I just really like that for him. I think he'll come through to a semi and be thereabouts towards next weekend. So they're the bets. Probably of all of them, I think Marie Buzkova is the one I like the most. She's up against the home fighter, two-time defending champion in Camilo Osorio, but the prices don't really match up. So between that one, Navone and Bucharest, Mashak and Marrakech, we'll take a go on TFO in Houston, and probably Jess Pagula in Charleston with Sarah Bejlek as the flyer at 40-1. See you next week.